clearly 15 years wasn't enough to stoke the flames of debauchery, let's say, because to be pretty simple, Trigger cooked with this one. Hello everyone, welcome to the Weeb initiative. I'm your host, the Weeb. This is a show where every other week I'll be talking about anime, manga, and everything in between. This week I'll be talking about, and in fear of the SEO of this episode being really bad, I will try not to say the actual name for the first, let's say, 30 seconds much, but easy to say. Today we are going to be talking about Panty Stocking with Garterbelt. No. So before I start, spoiler alert, I'll be talking about everything that happens in this season, and it is, I think, the first time that I talked about it, when I talked about the first season, I think I mentioned that it didn't really matter about the spoilers because for the most part this anime is made on a episodic basis, and there's no like ongoing story, overarching plot, and so on and so forth. But I will just say that the way they do the whole thing on some segments, and especially at the end, is something that I do need to actually say that I will spoil. So there's that. Another thing is that, well, this is already getting to a bit of context, right? So oh my god, man, I don't actually know what to say. This was something that could only happen on a dream, because, and this is something that, again, I already reviewed the first season, like 3 years back, I think, at this point. But I think I mentioned that to have the second season would be a miracle, no pun intended, given the theme and stuff, but they actually did it. I think it was back in 2024 when the news came out that Trigger had acquired the licenses / copyright of Panty Stocking from Gainax before Gainax eventually bit the dust and actually went out of business. Though, in coming back to a more historical context, the original crew who founded Trigger were the same people that worked originally on creating, conceptualizing, and animating and producing stuff. The original Panty Stocking before getting out of Gainax and founding Trigger, and so on and so forth. And that being said, though, the one thing that I think really becomes, and I will talk about this a bit more later, but I think it becomes really clear when watching this that I don't know if they got some kind of contractual, like, dodging the censors, or if the original was a bit tamer, or even if the executives at Gainax, I don't know, had a hand on it. But comparing the first season to the second one goes way over what the first one did. So in that sense, the first one was really tamer than the second one, and the second one goes so hard on some things, no pun intended, actually. But I think I prefer to preface this episode with this rather than maybe misleading someone into doing something they don't like. So if you don't like sex jokes, don't like cussing or anything of the kind, this may not be for you. And I'm saying this on the best way I can, because I found it really funny. I really like it. I like the proposition of the idea, the pitch for Panty Stocking. I think it is amazing. It's something so like loaded with personality and so out of the box, out of the normal stuff that you see in anime in general, that I just think it is so much better if you consider it not only as an anime but more as an art project, because then you can see how the creativity of the people that make it actually shines, and to see this same flame be like even more explored, this idea, this whole concept be even better like shown now in 2026 at the time of recording, but this came out originally in July 2025. This whole anime, it really does show a really nice amount of creativity, knowledge of the medium, I would say, and it shows let's say a self-awareness of some sort coming from the creators to actually represent how like they see the material they are making and the material they are parodying in some cases. So it is really something that really shines through. This whole anime, I think it calls back to a time that let's say more studios invested even more than they do right now, or at the very least they show more on screen what they invest, rather than, let's say, the samey kind of isekai stuff that always come out. I roping on isekai, but you could say the same thing for the like 2-year cycle of every rom-com that comes out, or whatever big hit comes out next, and so on and so forth. But still, that is not to throw shade at anyone, but it is to say that this one, Panty Stocking specifically, it is so unique that there is no comparison to anything that I could think. And even if you try to compare it with the material they are parodying, I would say that it would not end up well, because the twist they make is something that nobody will ever touch with a 10-foot pole. So they go to some weird places, some wild concepts, and it still comes out really funny, really funny. With that being said, let's try to roll back a bit and do the normal review. So first, the stats. So Panty Stocking originally was an anime that came out from the studio Gainax back in October 2010, and then ended on December 2010 with 13 episodes or 28 segments, as it is segmented in one OVA, something that they did not do or did not announce at this point for the second season. Anyways, the matter of the fact is the original season ends up with infamous at this point cliffhanger that we would not see the continuation or explanation for 15 long years, because after 2010, I think that if I'm not mistaken, I can be kind of there's some weird story right there. I don't know the exact details, so I may not get all the things right, but I think after 2010, the original like, let's say, the main crew of Gainax Animation was laid off, chose to part ways with Gainax, and then went on to crowdfund the creation of Trigger, through which they made Kill la Kill. And from then on, we went to then know them as Studio Trigger, which has then given us not only Kill la Kill, but Little Witch Academia, Kisnifer, Gridman, Darling the Franxx, and they had involvement with Darling the Franxx was a project together with A1 and Cloverworks, so there's that, but also they had some involvement more recently with Uma Musume, The Beginning of a New Era, the movie. And that is my segue to say that this team is also the guys responsible for the creation of Gurren Lagann, one of my favorite anime of all time, and the anime that I will recommend till the day I die. Gurren Lagann mentioned that I can get to the second season. So the second season came about after, I think, an announcement on 2024, when the license was actually sold or granted from Gainax to Trigger. So they basically, the license came back to the original creators, not the owners really, but the creators, the guys who actually conceptualized it and stuff. And after that, there was a huge media, I would not say huge, it's huge on on comparison to other animes, I would say. But they would do huge announcements on the new season they were working on for Panty Stocking, and for all the fans it came up as a really like a ray of hope coming after 15 years after the fact, because at that point most people would have like lost hope for ever getting an actual sequel, though it would come out on July 2025 to September 2025 with 13 episodes or 30 segments, with no OVA announced at the time of recording, so there's that. And as such, going with the times, this at the very least, this is what is listed on the Wikipedia page. It is licensed for Amazon Prime Video, so there's that. I don't know if this does like influence the fact that this season specifically goes way harder than the first one, or again, as I said at the beginning, I don't know if this new season was not vetted by censors, I don't know, or if due to it being on Prime Video, maybe they had a bit more leeway on what they could do. A bit more is a bit of let's say, I'm being cautious when I say this, because this is really more raunchy, really more rowdy, really more out there. They straight up show everything that normally they don't on anime, and they don't actually care about it so much so. And now talking about story, right? So there's 13 episodes. The first one has a really definitive line on the sand drawn, that the first episode is just as a housekeeping and getting all the affairs kind of in order before actually beginning the new season. They basically use the first episode to make a joke about the fact that it took 15 years to actually do the sequel, which then leads back to the thumbnail for this episode. Then they go through a whole montage and whole explanation of what the hell actually happened to have the plot twist at the end of the first season. In my heart of hearts, I want to say that they chose to change the explanation and not do something really lore heavy, because I think the ideas may have changed midway or something. Might have, like, they wanted to do that 15 years ago, but then now that everything changed, they kind of chose to not include the original plot line, because maybe it was a bit too lore heavy and they didn't actually want to sacrifice a whole season to it, or maybe it was a bit too sappy, or anyways. Why do I say that though? They do also a joke at the very beginning of the first episode that basically Brief has, and this is already talking to about our characters. We have the original crew, so we have Panty, we have Stocking, we have Garterbelt, we have Chuck the dog, and we have Brief. Brief is the geek boy who is in love with Panty, and we have the two demon sisters, that is Nisox and Scanty. I said in the wrong order, but you get it. The fact of the matter is, right, so Brief has this because, and this is a recap that they actually do in the first episode, but I feel like it is kind of needed that I mention it. So the end of the first season, it ends with Panty and Stocking actually gathering all of the heaven coins to go back to heaven as fallen angels and stuff. But at the last second, Stocking betrays Panty and chops her up into 666 pieces, because apparently she's a demon rather than an angel. And then the story basically picks up from that point. So basically Panty's KIA and Stocking is turning to the other side. We have then the villain at that point, that is one of the demons called Corset, though Scanty and Nisox are also demons, but they have basically deserved from hell somewhat. And so the first episode is basically this ragtag of Garterbelt, Chuck, Fastener is the dog, air quotes dog, of Scanty and Nisox, but Scanty, Nisox, Fastener, Chuck, Brief, and Garterbelt, they go through the city, gathering all of the pieces of Panty to then try to revive her. And after reviving her, she has to fight Demon Stocking, who turns into a kind of ghost T-Rex, which then leads into a big fight. And basically the whole thing has a very thematically but anticlimactic ending somewhat, because they don't actually fight to the death and stuff. And as such, this is the beginning of the season. This is the line descent that they trace from the very beginning, that is basically to say that Brief has his introspection in the middle of it, due to the fact that comedy and the way that we accept things, and this is telling this on a more like calm state, but they actually do a lot of both audio stuff and visual comedic kind of things at the same time. So this series, and this is a thing, if you don't know Japanese, and being pretty fair here, they use a whole lot of slang that I personally don't know. I don't have that much Japanese on myself, but even then they do use a whole lot of slang that I don't understand myself. So it becomes kind of really difficult watching this, because you have to, at the same time, you read the subtitles, and at the same time you need to be paying attention of what has actually happened on screen, because and this is a thing, right? So they throw a lot of visual gags in the middle of it, much akin to going back to Kill la Kill, for example. Mako's rants when she appeared to try to save Yoko from something and stuff. She always used a whole lot of visual gags to it and talked really fast, and it is the same kind of humor here, and so it becomes kind of really difficult to actually listen to it, to kind of get what they are actually saying and get the visual joke. So there's that. But the thing is, right, so high level, right, so it really does become a really interesting kind of thing, where they do end the first episode with basically one overarching change for the rest of the series. From the first episode forward, Scanty and Nissox live on, let's say, the underground of the church that Panty and Stocking live, and as such, Scanty and Nissox are the maids of the house where Panty and Stocking live. From that point on, then, we have our standard array of episodes. There are a few segments that are really remarkable, I would say. The first one, I think it's the first one on the second episode, that is the, how can I say, the one episode where they try to represent the divide between angels and demons, and how they can actually work together somewhat. In one episode, there is really like, it's not named that, but the idea is that it is like water and oil, they don't actually mix up, and so on and so forth. That goes on. There are some other and just to make this really clear, all the segments are really, really good. There are some segments that go a bit too far for my taste in terms of the jokes don't actually land, because I don't know, it just goes way over me. I don't get the joke, really. I don't know if it is kind of pun in Japanese or something, but some of the things that just don't land. And on the other side, there are some, they are really nice. The other one that is, I think, really remarkable is, I would say, a parallel to what we had in the first season. There was the one episode where Stocking had a ghost boyfriend who was, for all intents and purposes, not socially acceptable. In this one, Panty, at some point, she tries to raise a ghost cat in order to kind of get it big enough so she could farm heaven coins from it when she kills it, but then she learns to love it and so on and so forth. It's pretty cute, and in that sense, I think it is one of the segments that I remember a lot. And the other one that I do need to actually take a second to actually say, I don't know if it's the third episode or the fourth episode, but then we have the introduction of 2 new characters, effectively 3. I don't know if the third one was like mentioned in the first season, but even then I will count him as being presented here. We have the introduction, there is also a fourth, but I will get there. We have a segment where, for one reason or another, the ghost hunting licenses for Panty Stocking are suspended due to the fact that there are 2 new angels in town, Polyester and Polyurethane, that apparently are cousins to Panty Stocking, and so there is this whole hijinks. You may have seen the original, let's say, presentation of them, because they do have a similar transformation scene as them, as Panty Stocking, though the song is called Divine. Is I will not say the spitting image because it's a song, but still it really does scream Backstreet Boys. It really does, really does. I'll talk more about the songs a bit later, but just to say, they do have a really ridiculous transformation scene. This is something that they do not do so much in this season specifically. They do really cut out the transformation scenes for whatever reason. I really do like the transformation scenes in general, though I can see specifically a Polyester and Polyurethane being a bit too much, because can I actually use these words here? I don't know. Let's try it, whatever. If you would say that both Panty Stocking and Scanty and Knee Socks are inspired by pole dance and what that is implied, you could say that Polyester and Polyurethane, they are both inspired by Go-Go Boys, which is the, let's say, male equivalent of, which is not a bad thing, but they really do go, in my humble opinion at the very least, they really go a bit over what the other 4 show, which then leaves the question of, did they cut out all the transformation scenes because they needed to, due to plot, or due to some higher power? Anyways, that is just speculation on my side. Rather than that, the rest of the season does show that they didn't actually care about the content they are showing. They really go hard with the sex jokes and penis jokes and all of the equipment that Panty uses every time, and it goes from there. It gets weird sometimes. It is really funny, but it does get weird sometimes. Fact of the matter is, right, so they introduced these 2 new angels. Panty and Stocking have to fight them, and also due to the fact that they now are living with 2 demons on their house, the angels add that to their sims and so on and so forth. The joke in general, and this is a gag that comes up more and more because they do make some useless cameos until the point that even the anime itself calls them out on it. So it is something that it's an ongoing gag, is that they are new gems, so they are really younger than Panty and Stocking, and they do joke about not job security, but job requisites, work-life balance. They do have this gag where randomly the guys will be like fighting ghosts and stuff, and then the clock will beep and say, oh, we're off our shift, so that's not our problem anymore, and just leave it at that, with the ghosts still attacking humans and stuff. And this is the joke that does come up a lot, and it is nice to see, and something that really comes up, I think, more in this season. There are 2 main themes, I would say, that comes a lot in this season, is juxtaposition. They do love to make it everything about juxtaposition, and the other thing is that they not explicitly, but they really, if the first season didn't leave this really clear, the second one clearly does, that the main character, even though the name of the series is Panty and Stocking, the main character really is Panty. At the end of the day, she is the main girl. It is not really debatable on that. They really do make everything about her, so the main conflicts, most of the segments are about her. Most of everything has to have her in general, so she is really the main character, the main driver of the series. But even then, coming back to this one segment, and I'm taking my sweet old time to talk about this because there's so many things that stem from the single segment that permeates the rest of the series. That next thing that I need to talk about is that due to the fact that the guys are new gens, they do have more technological kind of weapons, so basically they outpace Panty and Stocking, and clearly they do make these a competition and so on and so forth. But at some point, and this is the main thing, Panty Stocking, Scanty and Nissox, through Brief, they get to meet the gunsmith bitch, who is a extra planar being that has the power of creating new weapon garments. Basically, she gives them the good old Mahou Shoujo transformation upgrade, and to be fair, the transformation scene does not change that much, and their costume in general doesn't change that much. Scanty and Nissox especially doesn't change a lot. I think they only noticeably get the, let's say, tiaras, or you could say crowns, but whatever, on their side. But Panty and Stocking do gain a few more ornaments on their hair and stuff. Especially they use a lot of the transformed cartoon forms rather than the let's say anime forms in this season, so you can see a bit more of the change in cartoon form rather than the anime form. They do actually change a bit of the visuals of the weapons and stuff and the functions. But even then, the important part is the inclusion of Gunsmith Beach and the Poly Bros, or I think they call Poly Kyodai, which I think may be a sexual joke somewhat. I don't know if it is, but I'm kind of certain about it, maybe. Anyways, so things go on. We have an assortment of different stuff. So basically, I would say that are two different, let's say, types of segments. There are the more plot-oriented, more character-oriented segments, which are basically stories based on the characters as they are. So there are no gimmicks. It is really just one day on their life. So there is this one about the fact that Scanty needs to use the toilet, but everyone wants everything comes up to not let her have her sweet time. There, oh my god, talking about these themes out loud really becomes really awkward. There is one where Stocking needs to fight a whole lot of goats just to buy sweet on a really far away mountain. There's one where Garter, Chuck, and Brief, they just had their fill with Panty and Stocking, and basically they go out, just the boys, to go to a casino and stuff, and some things like that. It is all really interesting in their different ways. And then there is the second type. There is the referential kind of segment. There's basically they will come up with a franchise, generally Western franchise, be it a movie, be it a TV show, be it something else, and just show it at Panty and Stocking kind of theming and see what happens. Pretty similar to what happened, I think, in the first season, where they had, I remember the one about Transformers, which was really out there. This one, I remember I left that days so much more than that I need to. Was about, hold on, I'm trying to have my composure to actually say this. They do a parody of Fast and the Furious with the cum that is inside of Panty after a nightstand. It is so out there. I was like, oh my god, there is no fucking way someone unironically approved this, and it is just magical, because at the same time that it is kind of okay, it is not like art in terms of animation and stuff, but even if you try to take your mind off the fact that this is Panty and Stocking and try to see it as it is okay. But then the moment that you remember the theming around and what the hell is actually happening, then you just lose it. You start crying how much you're laughing. I was like I was lost on words on that. There are some other stuff. There's like more referential stuff that does not like change the attitude of the characters as per se, which then is pretty great because they become kind of hybrid between a more plot driven and a referential and so on and so forth. The one referential that I need to say is the one that I was lost on words on that, because the moment that I saw it, I couldn't believe it. They unironically added a reference or a cameo or a callback, whatever you want to call it, to Inferno Cop inside of Panty Stocking. I was taken aback. I saw the same kind of sprite. It's not the same character, all things considered, but the moment that I saw the sprite and I got the vibe, I was like, oh my god, they are geniuses. They are actually calling back to the guys who actually took their time to watch this fucking thing back in the day. Like, oh my god, the studio respects the fans that went back and actually watched the fucking Inferno Cop. It is amazing. I mean, it's really funny, and the segment itself, it's pretty nice. It's a bit out there, all things considered, but it is funny. Then talking a bit about more of the characters, I think that the things that they want to cement really in this season, all things considered, is, as I said, everything is a juxtaposition. Everything ends up being a thing about how Panty and Stocking being angels, they're bad, or they have a really bad attitude, all things considered, and for the most part they are assholes, especially Panty. But in contrast to it, there is, if not one, there are two segments related to Scanty and Nisox. I would say especially the one about Nisox's birthday, that they really want to cement the fact that even though there are demons and stuff, Scanty and Nisox, they are wholesome. They are the wholesome part of the anime, more or less. In that one single segment, there is really good things to talk about Panty, and at the same time a really wholesome thing with Scanty and Nisox, which is just cute. It's just cute. It is good for pacing, I think, because it is kind of a break from the raunchy kind of harsh comedy that in general has in the anime. Now these are like the main segments that I want to say. I will spoil now the end of the anime because there is actually a overarching plot, let's say. Basically I'll try to be really brief and no pun intended with this, and kind of not give every other detail, but basically we get to meet both father and mother of Panty and Stocking. There's this whole thing that if you go back to the first season, you see the mentioning and let's say the showing of the mother's called Silk legs and the legs of their father, Liene. I don't actually remember the name, sorry. Thing is, right, so they do the same thing similar to like SpongeBob, where they use like real life photos of something, and then like the arm that appears in SpongeBob to take someone, it is like a real actual photo that they just crop in, use it, and something happens. They do use it on the first season, both the legs of their father and their mother, and when they actually animate both of them, you can see like their upper side in a similar style to Panty and Stocking, so the same cartoonish stuff, but then a crop out version of the actual parts that we see in the first season, which I thought really good callback, really good reference to. And again, this is the thing. Watch the first season before watching this one, because then you can get the full idea, the 26 episodes of the whole thing of Panty and Stocking. Long story short, so the father of polyester and polyurethane appears, tries to steal the throne from Panty and Stocking's father. So basically he's the god of gods, and then his brother Raine, he takes over due to a technicality. Then Panty and Stocking are de facto sacrificed at some point. Then Brief, Chuck, Garterbelt, Scanty and Nisox need to go back to heaven, try to save them, and then they go back, do a whole lot of trigger final fighting, even though it's really rushed even for a trigger final fight. In real trigger fashion, it ends up with them fighting effectively God, being short on throwing galaxies at each other, but they do defeat God on that. Nobody dies at the very end, but even then it all ends well with Boldwell, and I said that backwards on purpose. And the anime basically ends with Brief actually professing his love for Panty, and then they kiss, and then they do a real explicit segue to say that there's going to be a third season about Panty's son, and I don't know, actually, I think it's Nisox's daughter. I think it is her daughter. I don't think that Scanty actually had a love interest ever. I do think that Nisox had one, but I don't actually remember one. The one thing that I also thinking about Nisox actually, there is an episode which is like a callback to Yu-Gi-Oh, which was really weird, and at the same time really, like, I felt kind of attacked. I do play TCGs, that thing kind of, you know, I joke. Anyways, so this is the story. There is going to be a third season, apparently. Let's hope it doesn't take 15 years to come. Anyways, talking about the other parts of the anime. So, talking about first animation, I think this is the best animation that they could have done. There are some parts, there are some segments specifically, the ones that go really meta, that they just throw everything in a sink at them. And being aware of what's happening at the time of recording, I know that the news about how the ending for the season 2 of Freedom was made is insane. I do think that whole thing being done by one person with color pencil is actual both talent and real confidence of the studio on actually taking that much time and spending that much budget on a single thing. But at the same time, I will not like use that as a bar, because I think it is so much up there in terms of quality and effort that it just will eclipse everything else in a way. So talking about Panty Stocking specifically, right? So I just want to have this disclaimer about talking about animation going forward, because that thing is insane. But anyways, first off, right? So I think this is the best animation that I could have seen coming from Trigger from the last years. I do believe that I did not watch anything from Trigger from the last 5 years. I think Darling in the Franxx came out in 2018, so maybe 7 years at this point, 8 years, but you get the point. I do know that Gridman is nice and stuff though, and Dejo Meshi is on my list, but I think I will prefer to actually read the manga rather than watch the anime just for continuity's sake. But anyways, that's besides the point. The thing is, the animation is pretty well done. I think that the way that they do transition between the cartoon stuff to the anime stuff to the really cartoony things really show self-awareness on the way to deliver the jokes. This is at the end of the day a comedy anime rather than anything else, and so for the purposes of what they do, they really do everything really in a way that I would say it's really well done. Specifically, the one thing that I really wanted to know is how they recorded the explosions for each of the ghosts. It is something that I really wanted to actually understand how they did it, because it does seem like it is IRL. It does not seem like 3D animation, so it really like bogs my mind. How the hell did they actually record this? Did they have like a place on their office to just like go there and explode things with little crackers and stuff? I don't know. Maybe I'll research on that. I don't know. On that front, animation, I think it's pretty well done. It really serves well the whole series. Talking about songs, so and this is me talking about two minds, two different sides of me. At first, I thought that because I originally, I think, listened to just Fly Away More and the theme for Panty Stocking. The theme, I would say, it's really nice. They really did bring back TWI to do some of the songs. I forgot the rest of the names of the guys involved. I will try to leave them on the description, but anyways, most people don't actually listen to the end of the episode, so I'm basically talking to no one at this point. If you're still here, thank you. But so they did bring back TWI. I had on my bingo card that they would bring in a Giga to actually do something, but apparently they did not. Did TWI deliver on the legacy that they left on the first season? Yes, they did. After actually watching the anime, I have only good things to talk about. The soundtrack in general, it's something that I really am aiming to buy when I go to Japan. It's just so nice. They really did amp up the use of electronic more than rock, so there's that. I really did expect them to actually do a parallel or something similar to the City Rocks that they did in the first season. They didn't do it explicitly. There is the La La Land reference, which you could say that it is, though I would not count it because it does have plot and it's not its own segment, but still. Fact of the matter is, for all the seiyus, I think that really blew it out of the park. Everything involved on the soundtrack in general. I'm talking about seiyus because I really do think that I need to actually say that every one of the characters, they are so immersive. They never break character. It is really interesting how they actually do it. They are such a bunch of talented people. God damn it. It's hard. Anyways, so soundtrack, I have nothing to complain about. I think it's a 10 out of 10. Even considering that this is a sequel, I think that they, even with the remixes and stuff that they did, Fly Away More, the fusion of the themes for Panty Stocking and Scanty and Knee Socks are perfect, really. And just overall, really nicely done work. It's really well done. Outside of that, I already talked about soundtrack and animation, so basically all I have to say is about art. In general, I love the art of Panty and Stocking. I really do. I have a really huge respect for Trigger to come back and actually do this and deliver what we wanted, or what we were waiting for 15 years. To all the fans of the original, they actually came back and finished their project for real, and for that I really do love this. I'm a fanboy. What can I say? I really do love this studio. And with that being said, thank you guys for listening, thank you guys for watching. Please like, please share, please follow, depending on the platform you're in, and I hope stick around for next time. Bye.